Hello guys, and welcome to the Perfect Timepiece channel. My name is Josh, and today we have a very exciting comparison video for you. We are comparing the Orient Ray II, which my buddy Logan actually lent to me, with the newest addition to my collection, the Seiko SRPB09. And this video has kind of a interesting twist at the end. I don't think that you will be able to guess the winner just right off the bat here. And I hope this video proves to you that I can be subjective when reviewing pieces. This watch here, I love the design, I just bought it, but it does have a few drawbacks between the Ray II. So let us get right on into the meat of this comparison. I'm going to switch up the camera angles, and I will see you guys in just a second. Alright guys, so let us hop into our comparison of these two watches. As I said in the beginning, I think it'll be a little bit interesting to see who wins, considering I just bought this piece down here. So let's take a closer look at the Orient, specifically in terms of what it offers the customer. This is the value category. If you've been watching my channel for a long time, you know that that is always what we start with, because honestly, I think it's the most important category. So starting off, the first thing we have to talk about on the Orient is that it has this nice mineral crystal protecting the face of the watch. Honestly, I would have preferred sapphire, but considering this watch is only $150, around that price point, it depends on where you get it, it's hard to complain about it not being a sapphire crystal. So the one thing you have to worry about here, obviously, is scratching the face of the watch, but I think it is pretty well protected by the bezel of this piece. Now, this also has Orient's in-house F6922 caliber movement, which hacks and hand winds, and it also has the day and date complication built into the movement. Overall, the watch is constructed pretty nicely with mixed brush and polishing on the case. And then it does have a few negatives, as I mentioned, the glass protecting the face of the watch, but also this bezel is a little bit hard to turn, and it feels metallic, which I prefer. The Seiko bezels feel a little bit rubbery when you turn them, and if you've ever owned a Seiko and another watch, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, but I do prefer the metallic feel. And then the crown is a little bit hard to unscrew, but both of these watches have a screw-down crown to improve the water resistance. Now, flipping over to the back of the watch, it has the very simple but elegant little dolphin design on the back, and it has kind of a stamped, not like stamped, it has like a sticker on the crown or something. It might be like laser engraved or something, but it's not embossed into the crown, which I would have liked to see, but the Seiko back here doesn't even have a signed crown, so I can't complain too much. Now, for $150, I really can't complain. I think it's way above average, almost near perfect. So I would have to give this an 8.5 out of 10 in the value category. And we got it on a nice Perfect Timepiece strap. Head on over to shop.perfecttimepiece.com if you would like to purchase a strap for your Ray II. Alright, so let's talk about the Seiko Blue Lagoon Samurai here. This watch has a hardlex crystal on the face of the watch, which is Seiko's proprietary glass. It is a little bit less scratch resistant than sapphire, but it is more robust and durable than the mineral glass on the Ray II. Now, I would kind of expect this because this watch is $400 compared to the Ray II's $150. And you guys might be saying, like, this isn't really a fair comparison because when you're looking at lower end watches, every dollar really does count. But I think it's a fair comparison because anybody purchasing a new watch is probably going to look at both of these to try and pick something out. But The really cool thing about this watch, as you can see, is the nice light blue sunburst dial. I do like the sunburst dial on this watch just a tad better than on the Orient Ray II. This only has a day complication, no date, or only a date complication, no day, excuse me. And then it also has kind of the off color running from 0 to 15 on the bezel, which is nice to see. But the real reason we're looking at this watch, and the real reason why I purchased it, is because of the very angular, tank-like case shape. I think the mixed brush and polishing on the case, along with the nice knurling on the bezel, makes this watch stand out in terms of design, and that's really why I purchased it. I'm happy with the bracelet of the watch, but there are a few negatives about the watch. Number one, there isn't a signed crown. Number two, I don't know if I can show this on this camera very well here, but the bezel and the kind of inner minute ring don't really line up with the markers on the dial. And that's pretty disappointing. I know that not every single watch like this, not every model like this is made that way, but it is a little bit disappointing to see that Seiko's quality assurance isn't really up to par. The bezel is harder to turn, and it still has that rubbery feel. And, overall, both of these watches are Japanese movements, and they both hack and hand wind. So in terms of the movement, these watches are pretty similar as well. So overall, for $400, I think this watch just stands out, just above average because of the nice blue dial and because of the design. So I would have to give it a 7.5 out of 10 in the value category. Now moving on to the actual movements inside of these watches, I talked a little bit about this before, but the Orient Ray II has its own in-house caliber. This is the F6922 caliber. This does hack and hand wind, which is an improvement over the last generation Orient Ray. And it does have the day and date complication. Now, as I said, maybe I didn't say this before, but both of these watches operate at 3 Hertz, and that means that as the second hand ticks and moves from second to second, it actually ticks 6 times per second. So if you were to slow down this footage and count for yourself, you would be able to see 6 individual ticks, which is nice to see. So really, for $150, I would say that this movement stands out and is above average. I would give it an 8 out of 10 in the movement category. Now moving on to the Seiko I always messed up the numbers. This is the Seiko SRPB09. This movement is the 4R35 movement, and you can find this on much cheaper watches that cost $100 to $150, all the way up to watches that cost up to $600. But I would have liked to see the 6R15C movement in this watch, although honestly, if Seiko put it in here, they probably would have charged like $900 for this piece instead of $400. But it is a little bit disappointing to see that we didn't get a 6R15C movement in here, because the 6R15C movement is offered in the SARB line of watches for under the $400 price mark. So, these movements are fairly standard. The Seiko movement is not in-house, while the Orient movement is. And just because we have to factor price into the equation, I would have to say that this is a pretty average movement for the price. And, I think I'm being generous here, because honestly, you can get some Swiss movements for $400. All right, guys, so I apologize for the sirens. Somebody is dying. I hope not. But here we go into design. We are now talking about the design of this piece, the lovely Orient Ray II. Now, in terms of design, I think Orient had a really hit the mark with this piece. I think the hands are well designed, and I love the contrast between both the red-tipped second hand and the blue and white, the blue dial and the white indices. The polishing on the indices is really quite good, especially for a watch of, that's priced as low as this. Honestly, like I'm thinking about picking one of these up for myself. This is a much more modern themed diver. This is not a Submariner homage. This is something with its own personality and style, which I like to see. And it is more of a modernly designed piece. It isn't retro or vintage like the SKX line is. But I do overall really like the design, especially with the nice brushed case on the front and polished case on the sides. So let us move on to the Seiko. I don't think I told you what this gets in design. This gets an 8.5 out of 10 in the design category because I think it is above average. Now, the design category, I think, is where the Seiko has the upper hand. Finally, I do like the lighter blue dial on the Seiko. I think the sunburst effect is just a little bit more pronounced on this piece, and the different coloring of blue on the dial and bezel doesn't really bother me, and surprisingly, neither does the misalignment of the minute ring and the bezel, simply because the watch is really big. I think this is just around 43 millimeters, whereas the Orient Ray II is 38 millimeters, if I'm remembering correctly. And also, it is so flashy with that sunburst dial. It's incredibly legible, and it's just a really nice piece. Combine that with the nice angular design of the case with the mixed brushed and polished finishing, and especially taking into consideration how the bracelet kind of matches the overall curvature of the case. This really makes this watch hard to beat in the design category. It just feels robust, it looks like a tank, and it is quite flashy, I have to say. So overall, I would give this a 9 out of 10. The only thing I would say is, I was looking at the Hodinkee article where they compared this watch to the older Samurai, and I have to say I like the hands on the older Samurai just a little bit more. So I wish they did actually use the hands from the old Samurai on this piece, but I won't complain too much about that. I think if they use the older hands, this would be a 10 out of 10 in design. So let us move on to the next category in our comparison. Of course, we're talking about usability, or how these watches fare in daily use. Now, both of these watches are actually water resistant to 200 meters. I'm not sure if you can read that on the at the 6 o'clock position on the dial there, but it is water resistant to 200 meters. Now, the bezel and crown are pretty hard to operate, and I don't really want to show you guys that just because it takes a lot of time to reset the watches, and it's hard to do in these gloves. But they are hard. They are pretty hard to do, especially when it's on your wrist. Getting this crown out is extremely difficult. And as we talked about before, this is just a mineral crystal on the Ray II, which could be scratched pretty easily. Luckily, I've been able to keep it pristine so far. I'm sure Logan is very excited about that. But up next, so I think this Ray II, I'm totally missing the numbers today, but I think the Ray II earns an 8 out of 10 in usability. I think it is above average, considering the price point, and it is pretty legible. It is a pretty nice piece, and it is incredibly usable. I haven't had any problems, with it that completely shoot the usability score. So moving on to the Seiko Blue Lagoon Samurai SRPB09, that's a really long name. I found that this watch was pretty nice. You know, it had a really comfortable bracelet, and it has, 200 meters of water resistance. I think the lume on this piece is just a little bit better than the Orient. It is quite bright, and it lasts pretty much all night. I never wake up in the middle of the night and have to, squint my eyes to see this. This thing really puts out quite a bit of light. The crown and the bezel on this are a little bit hard to operate as well, although this has the advantage of having a bigger crown and a bigger bezel, so obviously they are a little bit easier to turn than the Orients. But in terms of the actual bezel, I think the Orient is the winner if you're just looking in terms of bezels, mostly because this does have the rubber feel and it doesn't line up with the dial for me. Won't happen on all watches, but it does happen on this one, which is a shame. Seiko, if you ever watch this video, you guys should send me a new one. I don't think they will. It's a limited edition. Anyway, so I think that this watch earns an 8.5 out of 10 in usability, simply because it does have the edge with the Hardlex crystal and the lume. So now, moving on to the final category of our comparison, that of course is quality. And I have to have a little bit of a disclaimer on this video. Obviously, the Seiko that I have has some issues, but as I was looking at the Hodinkee post, I noticed that the chapter ring on the Seiko that they had reviewed wasn't lined up either. So Seiko really needs to get on their quality assurance, because when I'm paying $400 for a piece, I expect the bezel to align. And I'm not going to return this piece simply because it's a limited edition, and I'm not sure if I return it and go through the hassle of returning it, I'm even going to get one that is aligned properly. It's just a giant pain in the butt. So that's my little aside. Let's just talk about the quality of these pieces. So the Orient Ray II has that really nice design. Obviously, I wish the bezel was designed a little bit differently so it was easier to turn. And then, of course, I wish the crown on here was actually embossed, and I wish the design on the back was also embossed. I feel like it's laser etched. I'm not entirely sure, so I could be wrong. Correct me down in the comments if I'm wrong. But overall, I would say it is above average in terms of quality, especially considering the price. So I would have to give it an 8 out of 10 in the quality category. Now moving on to the Seiko, as I said, this piece has some quality assurance issues. The bezel, I'm going to try and get a better shot at this, but the bezel and the chapter ring and the dial just don't line up. This is the best that I can do. The chapter ring doesn't move on the inside, and the bezel, if I click it, it's 1 minute too far ahead, so it even looks dorkier than it does now. Now, if you prefer the angular case shape and the overall look of the piece like I do, it might not matter to you as much, but it's hard to see for the price of this watch. Honestly, if I was going to buy one of these, I would probably wait until they're up used, and then I would look for one that doesn't have the misaligned bezel. As for me, I'm probably going to keep this piece because the overall case and knurling on the bezel is very nice. The bracelet, I think, is above average for the price, but honestly, the dial thing is just upsetting to me. And for that reason, I'm going to give it a slightly below average review, 6.5 out of 10 in the quality category. So if you're paying attention and you've been tallying up the scores, you'll know that the Orient Ray II has earned 82 out of 100 points, and the Seiko oh gosh, the Seiko SRPB09. I'm sorry guys, it's late. Blue Lagoon Samurai has earned 77 points, which is one of the lower scores for watches that I've ever, taken a look at. So it's kind of a mystery as to why I bought it. Its design to me just speaks to me, and I feel like that's how I can justify the purchase. Looks will make you do crazy things, gentlemen. But as I said, it earned 77 out of 100 points, and obviously the Orient Ray II is crowned the winner. Alright guys, I'm going to switch up the camera angles and give you guys a proper goodbye. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed our comparison. The Ray II wins by about 5 points. Not exactly something that you would expect, considering I just purchased this watch. You would think I would be super in love with it, but it does have its own flaws, and I hope that I made those clear to you in the video. So it wouldn't be a perfect timepiece video if I didn't tell you to check out my social media. There will be links to my Facebook and Instagram in the description down below. I do a whole bunch of cool stuff like daily deals on used watches. That goes out to my Facebook page, so like that to get updates on that. And then I also have like daily photos of these watches just out and about, so definitely head on over to my Instagram page for that. Also, if you like the strap that this Ray II was on, then definitely head on over to my shop. It's shop.perfecttimepiece.com. Again, there's a link in the description. And if you enjoyed the video, I know I have to plug everything today. If you enjoyed the video and you'd like to have a more active way of contributing to making this, a full-time thing for me, then head on over to our Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you'll get access to exclusive videos. I think there are like 3 or 4 up there now, so you'll get access to like an hour or so of content with Joanna and I. And thank you guys so much for watching. Definitely subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you all next time. Bye guys.